During the time of slavery in the United States, some slaves had a mixed-race heritage, or were mulatto. Mulatto is a term meaning offspring of one white parent and one black parent, a person whose ancestry is a mixture of Negro and Caucasian. Mulattoes were the result of miscegenation, which is the interbreeding between members of different races. Sexual activity among slaves and masters often happened on plantations, whether it was by force of the master or out of the slave's free will, though that was rarely the case. It was commonly known to happen. Being able to force their slaves into having sexual activities with them was often simple for masters. The slaves were scared into obeying their master's wishes and afterwards were too afraid to tell anyone because of the severe consequences. From the slave's point of view, it was torture. It left them helpless, terrified, and oftentimes pregnant. Different from today, in those times it was not an offense for white men to rape black women. Harriet Jacobs was a slave born in 1813 to a black mother and a white father. In her book, Incidents in the Life of a Slave Girl, she explains what took place on plantations. My master was, to my knowledge, the father of 11 slaves. But did the mothers dare to tell who was the father of their children? Did the other slaves dare to allude to it, except in whispers among themselves? No, indeed. They knew all too well the terrible consequences. The result of these actions was then a child with light brown skin. Over time, if mulattoes had children with whites or other mulattoes, the skin color of their children got whiter, and eventually, if this happened enough, though the children would still have Negro ancestry, they would appear completely white. Frederick Douglass, a well-known abolitionist, was also thought to be mulatto. In his autobiography, The Narrative of the Life of Frederick Douglass, an American, he tells another story of miscegenation. My father was a white man. He was admitted to be such by all I ever heard speak of my parentage. The opinion was also whispered that my master was my father, but of the correctness of this opinion I know nothing. The means of knowing was withheld from me. Evidence suggests that on plantations there was a favoritism towards mulattoes. They were often preferred over Negroes as household servants or concubines, which generally get less work than slaves who work in the fields. Mulattoes were also more likely to learn a craft or skill, which could lead to them earning money in their spare time if their masters allowed it, and eventually they might have been able to buy their freedom. Records show that high proportions of emancipated slaves were mulatto. As time went on, more and more mixed-race heritage slaves began to exist. Some that were completely white had figured out that it was easy to escape slavery because they could simply flee north and change their names. Because they didn't have their black skin color anymore, no one would know of their Negro heritage and they couldn't be recognized as slaves. This sparked many trials in which people were accused of having Negro heritage. Some people, who were actually all white and didn't have any Negro heritage at all, would be falsely accused by slave owners because the slave owners wanted more slaves, and accusations like these were fairly fast and easy because people tended to believe a white plantation owner over an accused Negro. In conclusion, black, white, or in between, slaves were still slaves, and I think it's safe to say that it was the worst treatment of human beings in U.S. history.